Today on Daily Tech Hack Global, 3 AI security stories that matter because they sit where automation meets real business permissions. First, CVE 2026-56274, the Flowise custom MCP server issue. Second, CVE 2026-10561, an IBM Langflow vulnerability involving Python execution isolation and authentication bypass. Third, CVE 2026-54309, an N8N MCP browser exposure in HTTP transport mode. The common takeaway is simple: AI workflow tools, MCP servers, and developer assistants are not side projects anymore. They are privileged infrastructure, and they need patch management, identity controls, logging, and clear ownership. Let's start with the lead item, CVE 2026-56274, Flowise custom MCP server command injection risk. NVD lists the affected area as Flowise before 3.1.2, custom MCP server feature. The recorded severity is high with CVEs 8.7 where available. The confirmed source summary says, Flowise before 3.1.2 contains multiple OS command injection vulnerabilities in the custom MCP server feature due to incomplete command flag validation and a regex bypass in local file access restrictions. An attacker with a Flowise account of any role, or API access with view/update permissions for chat flows, can configure a malicious MCP server to bypass the validate command flags block list. For example, Docker build is not blocked, and npx yes is not blocked while only y is, and the validate args for local file access checks, resulting in execution of arbitrary commands on the Flowise host. The practical impact, based on the published advisory information, is incomplete command flag filtering can allow command injection in an AI workflow tool. We are not going into exploit steps. The defensive point is enough. If a workflow product can launch tools, pass arguments, call APIs, or reach local files, then weak validation around command flags or arguments can become a serious operational risk. Why does this matter for builders? Flowise-style platforms make it easier to connect models, agents, documents, APIs, and tools. That speed is useful, but it also means the product can become a high-value control plane. If the same workflow environment holds API keys, database connectors, repository access, or internal service credentials, then a vulnerability in custom tool execution is more than a web bug. It becomes a possible path to data access, lateral movement, or unauthorized automation. The first defensive step is version verification. The second is exposure reduction. The third is log review for unusual command activity, new tools, unexpected connectors, and outbound calls that do not fit normal workflows. The second story is CVE 2026-10561, IBM Langflow Python execution isolation and auth bypass vulnerability. The affected area is IBM Langflow OSS 1.0.0 through 1.9.3. NVD records severity critical and CVEs 10.0 where available. The source summary says, IBM Langflow OSS 1.0.0 through 1.9.3 has an vulnerability due to an improper isolation of Python execution combined with an authentication bypass that allows an unauthenticated attacker to execute arbitrary code on the host system, resulting in complete compromise. This is important because Langflow and similar platforms are often used by teams experimenting with AI applications, internal agents, data pipelines, and rapid prototypes. In many companies, these tools start in a lab and then quietly touch production-like data. If authentication is weak, bypassed, or paired with Python execution isolation problems, the risk moves quickly from experimentation to business impact. For security leaders, the lesson is to inventory AI application builders the same way you inventory cloud consoles, CI systems, and secrets managers. Ask 4 questions. Who owns the tool? Is it exposed to the internet? Which service accounts and tokens does it store? Which workflows can execute code, query data, send messages, or change systems? If any answer is unknown, treat that as an action item. Patch the product, restrict access with strong authentication, place it behind trusted network controls where appropriate, and make logs available to the team that investigates incidents. The third story is CVE 2026-54309, N8N MCP browser HTTP mode exposure. The affected component is N8N at N8N/MCP browser before fixed versions 2.25.7 and 2.26.2. The source summary says, N8N is an open-source workflow automation platform. Prior to 2.25.7 and 2.26.2, when at N8N/MCP browser is run in HTTP transport mode, the MCP endpoint accepts session initialization and tool invocation requests without any authentication. Any network-reachable client, or any website visited by the user, can establish an MCP session and invoke browser-controlled tools. Where the N8N AI browser bridge extension is installed and a browser connection is active, an unauthenticated caller can access browser control capabilities including navigation, JavaScript evaluation, and cookie and storage access against the user's real browser profile. This issue only affects instances where at N8N/MCP browser is run with the HTTP transport HTTP. This vulnerability is fixed in 2.25.7 and 2.26.2. The practical impact is HTTP transport mode issue in an MCP browser component can increase exposure for automation workflows. This fits the same broader pattern around MCP, browser automation, and agent tooling. MCP is becoming a common way to connect AI systems to external capabilities. That connection layer is useful, but it deserves careful permission design. A tool that can browse, fetch, query, or automate actions should not be treated as harmless just because a language model is the front end. For developers, the advice is concrete. Keep AI workflow packages and extensions current. Avoid running experimental agent tools with broad local permissions. Do not store long-lived production secrets in local project folders. Be careful with file handler links, browser automation endpoints, and connectors that are reachable from untrusted networks. When possible, use separate development service accounts, scoped tokens, and short-lived credentials. If a workflow needs database access, give it only the minimum database permissions required for that specific task. For everyday users and business teams, the impact may be indirect but still real. AI tools are now part of customer support, sales operations, engineering, finance workflows, and security operations. If those systems are poorly patched or poorly monitored, a small vulnerability can affect documents, tickets, customer data, internal knowledge bases, or automated decisions. This does not mean teams should stop using AI automation. It means they should run it with the same discipline they use for cloud platforms and identity systems. Here is today's recommended checklist. 1. Verify whether your organization uses Flowise, Langflow, N8N MCP browser components, MCP servers, or similar agent workflow platforms. 2. Compare versions against vendor guidance and upgrade fixed releases. 3. Remove unnecessary public exposure and enforce authentication. 4. Review plugins, tools, workflow definitions, and stored tokens. 5. Check logs for suspicious command execution, unusual outbound traffic, newly created connectors, or unexpected changes to workflows. 6. Assign an owner for updates and incident response. The bigger trend is that AI security is becoming operational security. We are past the stage where the only question is whether a model gives a bad answer. The more urgent question is what the connected tool is allowed to do after that answer. LLMs, agents, MCP servers, automation platforms, and IDE assistants all sit close to code, credentials, data, and internal systems. The winning teams will not be the ones that avoid automation. They will be the teams that pair automation with least privilege, verification, monitoring, and fast patching. Bottom line, today's AI and cybersecurity briefing is not about hype. It is about patching and governance for tools that can act on your behalf. Start with CVE 2026-56274, then review CVE 2026-10561 and CVE 2026-54309 if those products are in your environment. Check versions, restrict access, rotate secrets if you suspect misuse, and make sure someone is accountable for each AI workflow system. That is how you get the benefits of agents and automation without turning them into unmanaged risk.